No plan survives contact with the opponent, and in the NFL draft, the Chiefs will contact all their opponents. How does their plan come together, and what is B, C, and the next Z plan that they have to put together? Today on Locked On Chiefs.
From the land of the free and the home of the Chiefs, this is the Locked On Chiefs podcast.
It's finally.
Welcome. It is finally here. Welcome back, friends and neighbors, draft fans all over the world. This is Locked On Chiefs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and definitely draft day. We're putting this out for you. We will be on all weekend long as the draft unfurls, but you guys got to get into it now. And this is our plan episode. What should happen, and what do you have to do when you have to zig when everybody else is zagging? Today's episode is brought to you by Ultimate Football GM. If you ever dreamed of being an NFL GM yourself, you can get your own franchise and take it through every iteration that you can find at ultimate-gm.com. Right now, you can look forward to the app stores as well, and our listeners get a 100% boost on their first franchise when you use the promo code Locked On at ultimate-gm.com. That's a tough one to say, but hey, we're nearing the end of everything that we have to say until we get to the Chiefs draft picks. We're going to get to a ton of it in what they do in maneuvering around the playing field that is the NFL draft. You can learn all about it in my draft guide over at NFL 33 and rogueapc.com. If you go to rogueapc.com, you can purchase it right now today as long as the Athletic Matrix with a nice little discount code that's Matrix LOC. If you use that, you'll get that. And you can find all of our written work, including my full draft board, over at NFL33.com. It is the pinned post. You'll find mine and Dan Harm's. You can download those at your leisure and take a look at them and follow through, because there's going to be obstacles in this draft.
There's definitely going to be obstacles, and I do think that there's going to be a lot of things that Kansas City is going to have to figure out going into this draft. We talked about it with Matt yesterday. There is going to be a lot of moves that the Chiefs are going to be trying to make, and that's going to be a lot of questions as to how this is going to play out. So, with all this being what it is, I'm really curious to see what Kansas City does in this draft, because there could be a lot of moves that they could make, and there could be a lot of things that they just kind of let go. So picking 31, especially in a draft where a lot of analysts are talking anywhere between 12 and 16, 17, 18 players normally in the first round rankings. I know that's not how you see it, but that's what I keep hearing people saying, is they're figuring about 15-ish on average people in the first round, which is lower than normal. So
yeah,
a lot of questions as to how this is going to play out, because a lot of teams are probably going to want to trade back because the value in their mind isn't going to be there. Are you going to be able to trade it for cheaper? It's possible.
That's the big question. And just today, news and rumors are coming around more and more and more. We've heard from multiple sources that the Chiefs are one of the teams right now that are trying to move up real hard. Tony Pauline confirmed that again this morning before I went and got on the plane to get here to Kansas City in RGR Studios East, that we call this. There is more and more significant backup for that story, that the Chiefs understand that maybe teams, maybe they have fewer than I do. I have 19 first-round grades on my board, and maybe I was being a little bit kind because it was so thin. But if everybody's in the same situation, they want to get out. It allows an opportunity for the Chiefs to trade up, I think, cheaper. But the question is how far, because I think there's probably a good 13 to 15, not just first-round grades, but consensus first-round grades. So then you have to get through who's the guys that might slip a little bit, who's the guys that are a little bit more specific to your scheme or specific to your needs in terms of athleticism or length, etc. That's, I think, where the question is and where the risk is for the Chiefs. How high do they have to go?
It's a great question, and the thing that you look at when you start looking at how this is going to play out for them is, what do they really feel like they need? I mean, one of the things that Veach has done, and we've talked about this a little bit, is he's done a fantastic job about basically filling out the entire roster as much as he possibly could. And they're in a situation where, he doesn't have a lot of specific needs that this team really looks at and could possibly need to go and try to attack and get. Are there things that they need? Yes. Are there huge glaring holes? No. The team feels like they have a right tackle. At least that's what they're saying in Lucas Niang. So tackle, while it's a need, it isn't a huge need. Like there have been draft positions in the past where Kansas City really needed to go get a player at a specific position. And last year, I almost felt like they needed to get a defensive end, like they needed to go get somebody. I don't know that I really feel that way this year.
And that's fair because they've done a good job of dressing it up enough, setting the floor of the roster up with the additions of Amenihu, of Juwan Taylor, bringing in enough wide receivers, some that are new, some that fit the scheme because they've been here before, and Justin Watson, those kind of things. Like the floors come up that you feel that you can run the offense, run the defense, and be static, get something done. Now, what you do to go above and beyond that is where that gets tricky. I think there's multiple areas that they can still improve in. It's just about what's available, maybe even less than what's the priority for the organization.
And I agree with that. And the one thing I have to ask, and we haven't really discussed this, we've talked about the trading up. We haven't discussed what it would take to trade up. But I will say I'm sitting here looking in the chat, and it actually made me think about something since we are live today. And I know we haven't done many live shows, but we're live again today. But this is a good point. Samuel brings up, looks like our first-round picks are going to be in the high 20s for years to come. Trade one of those away for an early pick this year. I think it's a great point. If you look at what they're going to be doing in the next couple of years, you got to figure they're going to be picking 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, somewhere in that range. You're never going to go get a first-round talent. Generally speaking, you're never going to go get a guy that's going to be on your board that you think is a first-round pick in those picks. Is it worth using that first-round pick next year to say, okay, maybe we can go fill a position, a premium position specifically, like a defensive end or like a left tackle, and go attack that need right now, get it on the roster, and then you're kind of set for next year. Yeah, you're still going to have other needs, but you're giving up a pick that is going to be likely a second-round type player anyway.
That's a fair point, and I will tell you this too. It's specific to this class a little bit more tricky because, yes, especially for one of the big pillar positions, I could see doing that. That does make sense if you forfeit a 20s now that you get a player in the 10s, teens maybe. I call them tweens. Maybe that's worth the value. The problem is, in this particular class, a lot of teams don't see any wide receiver value until in the 20s. Some teams don't see any defensive ends after Will Anderson into the teens. So for the Chiefs, it's about the way that their board is laid out. Are any of those players up there where they're within striking distance, but still offer that value? Because there are teams that might be willing to move now.
Well, especially when you start looking at what Kansas City is going to be willing to offer if they're in that position where they are open to taking next year's first round pick and moving up to go get a guy that they like. With as many teams as are going to want to be trading down in this draft, you have to wonder, are teams going to be looking to try to stockpile picks for 2024? That could work to Kansas City's advantage. And while it may hurt Kansas City next year, if you can hit on one of those premium positions, and I, quite frankly, I can't see them trading up for a corner, so I'm taking that one out. They have QB figured out, so you're not going to get that one. But defensive end, left tackle, yeah, I still don't understand that. Left tackle or defensive end make a lot of sense for this roster. And I think there's an argument that could be made there for even the wide receiver position being a premium position. Now, we've talked about that as well. I'm not saying that they need to trade up to go get a wide receiver into the high teens. But if there's a defensive tackle they think they can get in the high teens and that they can use their first round pick to go get, or a left tackle that they really like, I'd love to see them do it.
Yeah. And there's a couple of scenarios that we're going to have to go to. We're going to get into those right on the backside of this announcement and what are teams that might be looking to get out real quick.
And I'm going to tell you about our friends over at Ultimate Football GM. This is a game that I really have enjoyed playing. There is so many different things. And if you've ever wanted to try to be a football GM, this is the game for you. You need to go check this out. Today's episode is brought to you by Ultimate Football GM. You've heard us talk about this mobile game app. And if you've ever thought you'd make it a good GM, you've got to give this game a try. When you play Ultimate Football GM, you get to control and manage every strategic aspect of your team as you play through seasons and lead your team to glory, trying to build a historic dynasty. You actually get to go draft players. This is what we're talking about right now. This plays right into what we're talking about. You can go make the Chiefs picks for the next 25 years in this scenario. Players aren't the same, but this gives you the ability to go try to build a franchise on your own. It is fantastic. You get to hire the right coaches and coordinators, manage all the finances, including player salaries and terms, navigate through free agency, the draft, player personnel issues, and all the ups and downs of a season. All this in a challenging and realistic game world. Ultimate Football GM is completely free and playable offline. Play on the go as you want and when you want to. Locked On Chiefs listeners get 100% free boost to their franchise when using the promo code Locked On in all caps in the game store. That's Locked On in all caps, so make sure to check it out today. To download the game, just visit ultimate-gm.com or look it up in the app stores. That's ultimate-gm.com. Ultimate Football GM. Start your dynasty today. Ryan muted himself, so he's doing the normal thing that I like to do a lot. And really quick, I want to segue really quick. What I love about that last line, start your dynasty today, this is where Kansas City really can build a dynasty. If they hit this draft like they have the past couple, they are set up to be able to compete in a AFC that has gotten a lot harder over the past couple of years because of all the QBs. And, another one just joined in Aaron Rodgers to the Jets.
I don't know if that made it that much harder, but we can talk about that another day. And yes, when you're working on one screen, which is not my normal, it does come in handy to mute up sometimes. But real quick, Dan Thompson, thank you for the CCB love, and I do think I owe you a soda, buddy. But that's just one place to sit down and have a conversation over a soda, maybe, and figure out what you're going to do. A lot of hubbub today about what the Houston Texans are planning to do. Now there's this rumor that maybe they don't want a quarterback, and they're sitting at number 2. Trade out is the best scenario for them in trying to rebuild a franchise. The question is, how far back do they want to go? They definitely want to stay in the top 10 unless the GM is crazy. You don't want to get out of there because you need elite talent when you can get it. But if they trade back 5 and they pick up a couple extra ideas, a couple extra places where they can grab some more talent, maybe a second, maybe they get a third, what does that do for their 12th pick? What does that do for allowing them to then trade back out of that again? And is that a target that maybe Brett Veach is on the phone down to Houston right now trying to figure out, hey, what does it take to get that? And is it worth it for us? Because in my opinion, if you got to 12, you have your pick. You're going to have somebody on your board that is rated at that level, in my opinion, at either tackle or edge, and definitely at wide receiver. I can't see trading up for wide receiver myself because I think there's going to be some opportunities for the Chiefs where they are now or maybe slightly above in the mid-20s, say. So I do think it is about the premier 2 positions, the pillars on either side of the trenches. But feedback, volume, I think the scenario where if Houston trades out of 2, maybe they've already recouped a lot of value. Does that drop the price for Brett Veach? Can he squeeze that pick out of them for less compensation?
Possibly. And quite frankly, if they're looking to try to rebuild for next year and they're not taking a QB, I think it actually makes even more sense to take Kansas City's trade offer, because I would expect if Kansas City's wanting to get up that high, they're going to be offering next year's first round pick that they're going to have, which is going to give Houston the ability to go and get the QB that they possibly want. And there's 2 huge ones in next year's draft. So to me, it would make a lot of sense if Houston wanted to be able to not take a QB this year, be open to take one next year, and have as much capital as you can. You're going to be looking at another team's first-round pick and trying to take that so you have it for next year. And, they have 2 picks in the first round this year. I think that they have the ability to get to a point where they have 2 picks in the first round next year, and maybe more, depending on what they really do at 2.
I think that's probably the big question that's revolving around the first round, because with the trade of Aaron Rodgers, I think flipping those picks has probably set them. I don't think 13 to 15 is a big enough change to make them any more pliable or viable in terms of trading. I don't think it's any different today than it was a couple days ago. But the Houston trades, I think, does allow you that flexibility. So if the Chiefs don't want to stay at 31, and maybe they can't work it out, maybe Houston's just demanding too much or it's too far to go or whatever, I think moving up that far in this draft, that would be 18 spots. That's one more spot than it took to go up and get Patrick Mahomes, and that took a first-round pick. So let's be realistic. That is a lot to give up. Maybe they don't want to do it. But are the Jets now at 15? Now that they have the quarterback, are they more viable? Because 15 is a spot that gets you in front of the Commanders, gets you in front of Tampa Bay, gets you in front of a number of teams that either want edge or offensive tackle, and maybe that's now a new target.
Possible. I'm not exactly sure. I'm not sure what Kansas City's looking at and where they're wanting to get. They have a sweet spot that, and Matt talked about this yesterday. They have tiers of players and they know where they want to try to get to hit that tier. Is there going to be a run on tackles? Is there going to be a run on, wide receivers isn't really a very deep position in this draft. Are there going to be a run on edge rushers? QBs, there could be 4 or 5 that go in the first round. That's going to help Kansas City if that many go. But there's big questions as to how that's going to play out.
Big questions. So what are the other options here? What is Brett Veach trying to get done right now that he's maybe tracking down as we speak and record this? We're going to get to that after this.
I'm going to tell you about our friends over at Built Bar. If you're looking for a delicious snack and don't want all the sugar and calories, then you need to try the best tasty protein bar ever built. If you're like me and you want to make healthier snack choices, but you don't want to compromise on taste, I've got just the thing for you. Built Bars and Built Puffs. Built Bars are healthy and taste amazing. Seriously, they taste very, very good. You need to try these bars. What makes Built Bars so good? Well, for starters, they're covered in 100% real chocolate. That's right, real chocolate. And they come in unbelievable flavors like churro, peanut butter brownie, and cookies and cream. And now you don't need to wait to get a box. For years, we've been talking about ordering Built Bars at Built.com. But now you can pick up a box at your local Walmart or Sam's Club while you get your specialty flavors at Built.com. That's right. Head to your nearest Walmart today, walk to the pharmacy section, and grab a box of Built Bars. You can pick up a 4-bar box of cookies and cream, double chocolate bar, or coconut puff. If you're close to Sam's Club, run in and grab a 13-bar box with our hit flavors, brownie batter puff and churro puff. You can thank us later.
I will thank you later. Just had to send a quick snap of the new studio to Patrick, see if he likes it. We'll find out. Maybe I'll get a response. There's a question that I have is, what's enough? What's enough to accomplish the goal? And it all comes back to the board and where they have opportunity stacked. Maybe the Chiefs aren't as high as on the offensive tackles as I am. And so maybe that is a lesser target to trade up for. Maybe it is about edge. Maybe they feel that the rest of the league has overvalued the wide receivers and they are going to go so fast that they feel they need to get up to it. I think we've talked a lot about who those targets could be, whether it's Broderick Jones, whether it's Darnell Wright, whether it's Zay Flowers, Jordan Addison. I saw just dropped in a mock that I actually think could be a possibility. A lot there that's going to, I think, twist right now as we see the first 10 picks. And that's where I think they have to be prepared to be adaptable. So I don't know. For you, are you reassessing every 5 picks? Do you need to see the first 10 before you get a feel for what's going on? I think it's kind of every 3rd pick. I'm trying to reassess and replan. And I know the Chiefs have done 1,000 mocks, so have I. Where is it that the panic button comes in for you?
I don't know where the panic button comes in for me, but I will say this: picks 2 and 3 are going to be fascinating. And quite frankly, Houston and Arizona could make or break this draft for a lot of teams just because they're sitting there at 2 and 3. Neither of them, it sounds like, really want to go after QBs, though you could make an argument that Houston could just be, blowing smoke that they're not going to take one. But if neither of those guys go QBs and they're both trying to trade back and teams want to get ahead of Indianapolis who's going to take a QB, I would imagine, all hell could break loose in this draft, quite frankly. There's talk about how, Green Bay could take Jackson Smith and Jigba at 13 after, trading with the Jets to get up 2 picks from 15 to 13, and how that makes a little bit more sense because people are thinking he may not make it to 15. It'd be kind of funny, if you ask me, if the Green Bay Packers go take a first-round wide receiver right after they trade Aaron Rodgers, but it is what it is. To me, when you start looking at this, I think that you have to be ready for anything. And I don't know that it's 3. I think it has to be 5 because every 3 picks is going to be – everything could change just so drastically in 3 picks. Every 5 picks, is still going to have that opportunity, but you're always going to be reassessing on draft night. You're always going to be trying to figure out, where do you think this next pocket is? Where do you think you can get your guy? And who knows? One of the things that I loved about Travis Kelce and Jason Kelce's podcast this year is that, Mahomes came out and said that he basically told the Chiefs that he was going to be gone if they didn't get up past 12. He didn't know about New Orleans. Maybe there's players that want to be here enough that know where they're going to go. Maybe that helps Kansas City.
Well, some players think they know where they're going to go because Will Levis is putting out that he's going to be selected by Carolina. I don't think he actually stipulated whether it's going to be pick 1 or pick 32. He has to figure that out. But some prospects do think they know. And that brings me to the scenario nobody wants to talk about. And that is if there is a lot of pressure to move up and value stays high, what can the Chiefs do? Because there are teams that I think are going to miss out on a quarterback, especially the big three. So that makes 31 attractive. And if you are, say, the Houston Texans, or you are the Indianapolis Colts, and you just can't pull the trigger at 4, or if Carolina takes your guy, maybe you want to get back into the first round and your guy's still there. I can trade back with any of those teams. I can trade back with the Arizona Cardinals and do a pick swap to 34, try to work out the D-Hop thing, or a Budda Baker thing. I could see either making an addition to this roster that can help. The question, as always, is always cap space, and we've talked about that ad nauseum. So the details will have to be worked out, and probably already have been before the phones are even picked up. But for me, I don't think they can go back past the Raiders in the second round. That's kind of the limit for me in order to get talent that can help this roster. So a trade back has to be to like 37 or higher.
Yeah. And I see that's very reasonable. I think that if they're wanting to trade back, that makes a lot of sense. Problem is that really limits who you can trade back with. So big question as to whether or not that's going to matter. I still, based on Brett Veach's history, I still can't imagine they're going to stay at 31. And I really don't think that trading back is going to be a big option. I think he's going to swing for the fence, and I think he's going to try to build around Patrick. And I think that's what he wants to do every year. And I think that what you've seen this offseason, they lost their 2 starting tackles in Wiley and in Orlando Brown. Yeah, they brought in Jawan Taylor, but he doesn't have to play left tackle. And it just makes a lot of sense for them to go and get that type of guy if they think that any of these guys can be their 10-year starter at that position. I will also say you're not the only one that sees Skronsky as a guard. I've seen several other people that have been saying that. So that really does limit your options. Now you're really down to 2 top-tier tackles if some of those teams also agree with what your assessment is. And then you're sitting there at 31 or in the late 20s thinking, okay, well, is Anton Harrison worth trading up to go get? Because he's not going to make it to 31 if those guys are gone by 15.
Right. It all becomes relative at that point. The earlier the first tackle goes, that's truly a tackle, the faster they all go. I agree with you there. And maybe that's the way that it works out. And the Chiefs do have to trade up even to acquire him if that's what they're looking for. We started the offseason mocking him heavily because he is a nimble, like one of the more athletic tackles. The wide zone aspect he can run. He's got to get a little bit better at his pass sets, but he's got potential there, right? Clearly a second-tier tackle in this class. But I think it's an opportunity, and I think what I'm going to have to do is weigh all 3 positions as we go through and reassess every couple of picks to see exactly what's going on.
Yeah, and there's also, I've heard rumors that Matt Bergeron could go in the first round.
Mm-hmm.
It's possible. He's not really a first-round talent, but none of the guys that are going to be going at the end of the first round probably are first-round talents. And quite frankly, it's possible that there's guys in the top 10, probably not top 10, but top 15 that may not be first-round talents. Teams fall in love with players all the time, and so we'll see how that ends up shaking out. But in a draft where the league seems to think that there are so few first-round talents in this draft, you're likely to get a second-round talent if you're lucky at 31. Because, how many are they going to have that they think are second-round talents? You would think it'd be higher than first round, but, is that a back of the second-round type guy, or is that going to be a first part of the second-round type guy? That's what it really comes down to, and that's where if they do get to 31, it becomes a question of, okay, is it worth trading back if you're getting a guy that you think should be drafted at the end of the second round? Because you'd be picking him at 31 otherwise.
Right. Well, when I take a look at the top, there's 3 places that set the tone for me, and I think will for the rest of the draft process. And that is the Indianapolis Colts at 4, the Seahawks at 5, and the Bears at 9. The Seahawks and the Colts, because their GMs are more than competent and have been good, Colts are plagued by a quarterback issue. They've got some great selections, and they've built up a team that I think can still win should they get a decent quarterback. Value that they choose to go after there, I think, is going to tell part of the story of the first round. And the Seahawks are the same way. After that, I think it's about the Bears, because that's my most likely spot to see the first tackle go. And if that's where it starts, that's far too early for the Chiefs. I don't think the Bears, even though there's a solid relationship there, I don't think the Bears are going to trade out of that number 9 spot, especially with the Chiefs when they have to go all the way down to 31. So that limits that kind of thing, and the cost would be astronomical. So I think as we sit here right now, seeing what those 3 picks do, I think will set the tone, and then there might be a scramble. And we might see the Chiefs have to give away more prospects or more draft capital than we generally like. But we have to, at the end of the day, trust that there's some point in doing it and that they have the target that they're looking for.
Yeah, and I think obviously I'm sure Brett Veach has a guy that or 2 or 3 or 4 that he really wants to go after in the first round. The question is, are any of those guys going to be available at a place where the Chiefs think that they can get to? I mean, you talked about Houston earlier. It's possible Houston would be wanting to move back. We talked about in that in depth. I mean, I would think that all 4 of the guys that Veach wants and really feels like he could go get would be available at 4 or be available at 12 or really close to 12. But, you start looking at the top of this class, all these QBs, the more QBs that go in the top 5 or 6 picks, the better it is for Kansas City. That's the reality. And the other part of it that we got to figure out, and the other part of it that's going to be really interesting to watch is, what do the Bears do? Because the Bears, I agree with you. I think this is the first spot that a tackle goes. But if it's not, then, is it Tennessee that gets a tackle? Or does Tennessee make this draft more interesting and trade up and try to go get a QB that they want? There's been a lot of rumors about that as well.
And I like that cascade effect, because if they trade up, it's likely to number 3 with the Arizona Cardinals. If they do that, now the Cardinals are in a position at 11 that they could trade back again, recoup more, and maybe that's another spot the Chiefs can try to get to if they feel the target's there. If Jalen Carter falls that far, and I know some of the folks in the chat are asking about Jalen Carter, looks like he's got some community service he's got to do. And I think the legal aspect of his off-field issue has been taken care of. I don't think there's any risk of him not being able to play. The question is the preparation and everything else around it. If the league takes a pass on him and allows him to drop like a rock, that's another player that I think the Chiefs have been more comfortable than some at taking risks on players that have some off the field baggage that they have to sort through and that the team can help them with.
Well, and they also feel like they have a good locker room that can be a good place for players like that. So I think that also works in their favor in that regard. I don't expect that they're going to get a guy like Jalen Carter. I just can't imagine there's going to be enough teams in the league that are going to pass on a talent like that, because what you've seen over and over and over again that becomes quite realistic is the NFL looks at your talent level, and that's what determines how you get treated draft-wise, suspension-wise. Well, not necessarily suspension-wise, but whether or not you're cut when you get suspended. I mean, it all plays into it. So something to watch. I'm really curious to see what ends up happening to him. I would imagine he's still going to be drafted pretty high, but we'll see.
We definitely will. And we're going to be with you all weekend long as it comes down. You can see our reaction here on the channel. We'll have shorts for you. We'll have some short forms, regular video. We'll have episodes as well. Don't miss anything. You everydayers know how often we're here. And for everybody else, we are here 5 days a week, and we're going to have a ton of content for you this weekend. You can also watch live reaction to me over on RGR Football on YouTube. We'll be able to jump back and forth. We're going to have a lot of content on both. So please make sure you get liked and subbed here on Locked On Chiefs. Get on the audio as well in case you happen to be driving somewhere and you can't really watch YouTube. Get the audio versions as well. We appreciate it. And let us know, what's the trade that you want to see? Tell us where, tell us with who, and tell us what you want to give up for it. Put it in the YouTube comments. Put it in the reviews on Apple, on Spotify, wherever you like. We'd like to know your opinion. And as we go through this process, it will definitely change. So we will be adapting right along with you. Thanks for checking us out. Make sure you check out the other Locked On shows like the Scouting Show and the NFL Draft Show. All the information that you can handle. And please, please, please get over there and get to NFL 33. There's actually a link to the draft guide over there, but you can get the big boards right now. It's on the top of the page itself Free downloads open to everyone at NFL 33 right now. Thank you for your time today. I hope you're ready for the draft because we are. We will talk to you draft night. Have a good one, and we'll see you then.